Hi everyone, my name is Sarah. I'm one of the tutors here at Eng Lang Pro, and today I'm going to be covering Overt and Covert Prestige. So we're going to be going through exactly what it is, how we can kind of connect that idea to identity and how it kind of exists in society as well. And I'm also going to show you an exam question from a previous year, a previous VCAR exam actually, and I'm going to go through kind of how we can unpack that exam question and understand it and the kind of things to look for as well when we're trying to respond. Let's jump right into this walkthrough. So what is prestige? Now, the definition of prestige in the English language sphere is a little bit more specific, obviously, to language. So prestige in English language is the social standing or the opinions that are attached to specifically a certain language or an ethnolect. Now, there's two types of prestige. There's overt prestige, which is formed through overt norms, and there's covert prestige, which is formed through covert norms. Now, prestige allows us to form opinions on a lot of different languages or ethnolects, and this also helps us to therefore identify ourselves as part of those communities which speak those languages or ethnolects, which can be really powerful in sort of solidifying our own identity. But the flip side is that prestige can also cause certain languages or ethnolects to be regarded as lower in status, which can obviously cause identities to feel attacked. Now, as you can see, overall, the concept of prestige links really closely to identity. And something you'll learn, not just in this unit, but all throughout the English language course and even throughout life in general, is that identity and language are really closely linked. The kinds of words you use, your vocabulary, your accent, if you speak an ethnolect, or if you speak a foreign language even, if your English is standard or non-standard, all of that says a lot about the kind of people we are, or the kind of person you are. All of these things sort of come together and create your identity. So understanding prestige and the interplay between prestige and identity and language is a really great way to enrich your writing, your analysis. So let's go through them in a bit more detail. So let's dive into overt prestige. So what is overt prestige? Overt prestige is the prestige that's associated with standard variants of English. So these are the variants that are used very commonly and widely in society. So these, they're often used by very powerful institutions or people, and they're often seen as proper or correct ways of speaking. Now, in today's society, obviously what's proper or correct is constantly changing. I mean, every single day, there's probably going to be so many words, so many phrases, so many ways of communicating that are added to the English language. And so there isn't really a proper way of speaking anymore, is it? Language is very organic. It's very malleable. It can change very easily. But there's still standard variants of English that are used by certain people. And an example of this is the Prime Minister making a formal address on national television. Now think about the kind of environment that is. Think about the kind of situation that is. It's very public, and thinking about the kind of person the Prime Minister would be, someone that's held to very high regard, and someone that probably needs to maintain that kind of reputation with the public. They would be using standard Australian English. But why would we choose to employ these standard variants of English? Now, as I said before, as a Prime Minister, for instance, you probably want to maintain a certain level of credibility or construct an identity for yourself that makes you seem educated. But it also allows you to match the register of certain social environments. So obviously in an environment or in a situation such as the one of a formal address on national television, it's a very public environment, right? And so when you're trying to appeal to the public, which is obviously ties into this third point right here, trying to appeal to the public or a very large group of people about something that's probably going to be a topic that's going to be very important or serious, obviously a register is going to be a bit more formal. You're not going to really find much slang or many influences of things like idiolects or ethnolects in speeches that use standard Australian English. So you kind of see here why we would choose to employ these standard variants of English. Now, there is a flip side to this. There are a few drawbacks of this, however. It could be because the use of variants that align with overt prestige, so the standard variants of English, may cause people that don't want to conform to these standard variations to feel excluded from society. Now, as I said before, and as you'll always learn about English or just language in general, identity and language are very closely linked. And so when you have this kind of this tension between what is seen as standard and yet what people want to express by themselves, there is a little bit of a feeling of exclusion there. And so having variants that kind of adhere to these, that align with overt prestige can kind of cause that bit of, like I said, tension. On the back of that, it could also therefore restrict the infusion of culture or cultural expression or expression of identity as well, because obviously the language that a person speaks or the words that a person uses are very, very telling about the kind of people that they are, the kind of person that they are. And it's a bit of a problem, especially in the Australian society, because increasingly we see that multiculturalism and acceptance of ethnolects, acceptance of new cultures, it's increasingly accepted and increasingly aspired to. So these variants that that kind of align with overt prestige can therefore sometimes be an issue, especially when we're trying our very hardest to kind of move away from a past that's more homogenous. Now, we've talked about overt prestige, but what are overt norms? Now, overt norms are actually what help us to gain overt prestige. And the simple way of putting this is that by adhering to these overt norms, we can gain overt prestige. So, for example, if we speak in a standard variant of English, like standard Australian English, we can gain overt prestige. Let's dive into covert prestige now. Now, as we saw before, overt prestige was more about a large group of people. It's more about standard variants of English. But now covert prestige has an even deeper relation to identity and a deeper relation to sort of cultural retention and cultural expression as well, and also just individual expression and individuality as opposed to a homogenous kind of society that speaks the same standard of English as well. Okay, so covert prestige is the prestige that's associated with varieties that are spoken by different social groups or communities. And speaking these varieties or using these varieties promotes a strong sense of identity and belonging within these groups. And so, as you can see, ethnolects or variants that align with covert prestige or that achieve covert prestige have a great emphasis on establishing solidarity or in-group membership, which are both very good things to discuss, especially in your essays. Now, an example of an ethnolect or a variant that could achieve covert prestige are things like Sri Lankan English or Indian English, which are obviously much less understood by the wider community, but understood more by those who actually speak it. So it really kind of binds together speakers of that same ethnolect by creating a level of sort of relatability and understanding and mutual understanding that allows them to communicate productively. But why do we choose to employ these non-standard varieties of English? We have a standard variety. Why are we not conforming to that standard? Why are we so insistent on using our own cultures and infusing our language with that, right? Well, it's to bring about a sense of identity, obviously, but also it allows us to retain a sense of pride in not just our language, but also our culture, right? And this can really be significant, especially in migrant communities, which who may leave their own countries and come to a new country like Australia. And obviously, the native language here is English. And so there is this kind of compromise, right, between between native language and the language that's the widely spoken language in a new country. And so kind of fusing those two things together creates an ethnolect, which allows people to still retain their culture and their identity, but also meet people where they are, meet people the same place that they are, and be able to communicate with mutual intelligibility, which right here is very important. Now, the whole point of language is to communicate, right? That's the whole point of language, is to communicate with people. It's to understand perspectives. It's to gain knowledge. And so being able to understand what people are saying and vice versa is obviously it's a very significant consideration when you choose how to communicate with somebody. You want them to understand you. I'm not going to go to someone that speaks English and start talking to them in Sinhalese, in a different language, right? If I don't know how to speak the standard variety of English, I'm going to do my very best, and that might be Sri Lankan English, for instance. And so it allows people to keep their culture, to keep their identity, to let that part of their identities remain, and to be proud in that, but also then to communicate with people productively and in a way that allows them to continue to express who they are. Now, just like overt prestige, there are a few drawbacks in languages rather that achieve covert prestige, and one of them is that even though we try our very hardest to allow people to understand us, even though we try our very hardest to kind of rise to the occasion and rise to the register of an occasion, or rise to the kind of the social environment and understand those social cues by altering our language, we're not always going to get it right. And that's okay. But the use of non-standard varieties can therefore result sometimes in issues in understanding, right, between certain communities. And one way this could happen is that, certain language used within a certain ethnolect may have negative connotations in a different, outside the ethnolect, in a different variety of English, or, in standard English, for instance. And there could be this kind of rift that forms between people who use the standard variety of English and people who use a non-standard variety of English, which can therefore kind of make a speaker of a non-standard variety feel attacked, or feel different, or feel confused even, because something that's so normal to them is obviously not normal to someone else. And so we have this kind of, again, tension in identity, and this compromise that needs to be made and understood. It's obviously always going to be some kind of drawback, whether it's overt prestige or covert prestige, and the languages that achieve those different labels, but both also have their own benefits. And it's really important to understand how we can kind of form a really rich discussion of the two different sides to these ethnolects and how they sort of play out in Australian society as well. Very similar to how overt norms are the standards of language use that align with overt prestige, it's the same thing here, but it's covert. So the standards of language use that align with covert prestige is what we can sort of define covert norms as. So an example of this is if you think about how teens use their language, there's things like slang or swearing, and by using that kind of language, you're signifying, as the person that's using it, that you are adhering to that specific way of speaking, a specific idiolect, a specific sociolect, or that ethnolect. And so you're adhering to those covert norms, which when you go and speak that ethnolect or idiolect or sociolect or whatever it is, when you go and speak that or with that, within that community that also uses that same variant, you gain, or that language gains, covert prestige. Okay, so I've given you now a bit of a rundown on overt and covert prestige, as well as who uses the variants that could achieve that, and how it kind of plays into identity as well. But I want to now show you an essay question from the 2022 VCAR exam. And it talks exactly about what we've just spoken about. So let me just pull that up right now. Okay, so here's the question. This is question 9, the very last question on 2022 English Language VCAR exam. It's on page 15 if you want to find it yourself. But The essay topic here is our linguistic repertoires can be used to exploit overt and covert norms, helping achieve our aspirations. Now, from the get-go, when you look at an exam question like this, you want to be keeping an eye out for language that kind of could catch you out if you don't address it in your essay. Now, straight away, I'm looking here at this very last part, helping achieve our aspirations. So somewhere in my essay, I'm going to have to talk about how exploiting overt or covert norms actually helps me to kind of signify what I'm aspiring to, kind of signify what I'm aiming to convey. And then I'm looking here at this word exploit. Exploit overt and covert norms. We just talked about overt and covert norms. They are the kind of sort of standards by which overt and covert prestige are achieved. And so I'm thinking now, how can I exploit, how does a person exploit overt and covert norms? Maybe it's by switching our linguistic repertoires depending on who we're speaking to. Maybe it's by being more formal when I'm talking to someone that's maybe got a greater social status, or maybe it's by dropping down to the less formal, the relaxed formality of a situation where I'm just with my friends or my family, right? There's so many things you can discuss here, and also discuss. That is the task word here. It's discuss. That is what you need to do. You need to discuss. That means talking about both sides, right? And so now I've kind of got an understanding of what the essay topic is. I can go and have a look at the stimulus materials. Now we have one here about a cover letter. It's talking about a cover letter to your future employer. It's talking about impressions, first impressions, talking about what you're kind of going to put in that cover letter. And here we have this very interesting sentence. So when you set out to write it, there are some words you'd be wise to avoid, right? And this is what we can call kind of exploiting covert norms or exploiting norms. Now, for instance, if you're going to write a cover letter to a future employee, you want to obviously set a really good impression, right? So the language you use in your cover letter can set you apart from the competition. So you want to use things like buzzwords, you want to use generic phrases, you want to be unique, right? So it's a really interesting kind of example here of how people might exploit these covert and overt norms in order to reach their aspirations, right? Because when you write a cover letter, you want to get that job. That's what you're aspiring to. You want to eventually be employed by that employer. And so it's a really great example here. So you kind of have to let the stimulus kind of guide you, right? What kind of social situation is this occurring in? It's occurring in a very common experience to many of us applying for a new job, making a good impression. That's stimulus 1. So now onto stimulus B, we have a podcast transcript. And it's very interesting because it shows, it really clearly signifies the sort of generational differences in understanding between what is considered as formal, what is considered as rude, what's normal and what's a bit, abnormal even. So we have, presumably a young person saying, my mom knows that I think a full stop is rude. And then we have someone that replies and saying, why would someone be mad at you? So there's this confusion, right, between different generations where the younger generations may think something about a certain language choice or a certain it's choice on punctuation, where the older generation thinks it as completely normal. And so, changing our linguistic repertoires, kind of shifting them when we communicate with different people, is probably something that many of us do unintentionally even. Just the first 2 stimulus materials that I've gone through now, and I'm sure now I'm going to leave these 2 for anyone else. I'm going to leave these 2 for your own kind of analysis. But yeah, that is sort of how I would go about understanding stimulus material as well as the topic. So just to finish up, today we covered overt and covert prestige. We talked about how it's used, what it is. And I also showed you an essay question from a few years ago. The topic is really important in understanding identity, and the sooner you get a grasp on how it kind of works and the kind of things you can talk about in relation to it, your analysis and your essays or even your ACs, and it becomes so much better. So good luck.